With that. I would like to take this opportunity now to introduce Dr. Clyde Anderson. So this is Clyde's second delivery for us. So welcome back and thank you so much. Clyde is a registered professional engineer with a PhD in heat transfer and supersonics from the University of Queensland. Since founding his own business, building energy efficiency consulting company in 1999, Clyde has consulted now on projects with a cumulative total of over 2 billion with a B annually. So I think that makes him more than qualified to assist us today in how to do our own home energy audits. Um, we do have the chat boxes and the Q&As open today. So if anybody does have a question as we progress through this webinar, please feel free to use either the chat box or the Q&A. I will be monitoring them throughout the process. I will close my screen and mute myself. However, I'm a little unwell and I don't want to be coughing and spluttering through Clyde's presentation. But I will be here and I will be monitoring. So if anybody needs anything, please feel free to utilize those things. Without further ado, we've also got this pre-engagement survey, which if everyone has a quick second, if you could use your QR code function on your phone and just do a quick scan. There's 5 questions. It just is 5 really simple questions asking you what you already know about energy and electricity and your use of energy and electricity. I will send the pre-link out post this engagement and also a post survey as well, and a little opportunity to win $400, which we'll talk about at the end. But if I can, I would like to hand over to Clyde now. Thank you so much. And yeah, take it away. Let us know, how do we do a home energy audit, Clyde?
Well, hi everybody, and thank you for turning up, and for those on the recording, thank you for participating with us. I will be going reasonably slow at the beginning, and then I'll be speeding up because there's a lot of information, a lot of content, and a lot of it is repetitive, so that's why I can speed up. So, how can we reduce the cost of energy in our homes, and particularly using less energy? So, we're looking at household energy use, and we're looking at typical seniors household energy use in particular. So if you have any questions, please use the Q&A or the chat. I think the chat is the place to put your question in, and we'll get to them as we go along. So what are we talking about today? So a little bit of an introduction, which gets your thinking in the right framework, because a lot of this is numbers, and some people have challenges with numbers. So we need to just go slowly for that bit so that we can keep people on board. Talk about the 10 main uses of home electricity, how to measure and how to reduce your energy use, which obviously is part of energy efficiency. And then finally, a little quick look at how to select efficient energy appliances. So just a bit of a disclaimer, we don't have your situation in mind. This is a general webinar, and we don't know exactly what your requirements are. And so we're not personalising the information for you. You will have to possibly adapt the information provided for your situation. And sometimes this is a bit too much, and it will get very technical fairly quickly. So if it is too overwhelming for you, maybe you can ask for some help from someone who knows how to do it. So let's get into some terminology so that we can understand the typical energy use in an average home. So energy use, that's what we're talking about. It's measured in things called kilowatt hours, which is 1,000 watts for 1 hour. A watt is a measure of power. So power demand or load is measured in kilowatts, which is 1,000 watts. And the symbol is kW. So kilowatt hours is kWh and kilowatts is kW. And then on your electricity bill, you'll also see a service fee, which is charged on a daily basis. So in your billing cycle, whether it's monthly or quarterly, there'll be a third component to your electricity bill, which will be a daily charge. So breaking that down a little bit more, energy usage is what is sometimes called consumption. That is, your consumption is in kilowatt hours. It can be measured in three ways: peak or shoulder or off peak. Now, shoulder is in between off peak. What's peak? It's typically between 5 o'clock and 9 o'clock at night, something like that. Really depends on the time of day and the time of the year. And off peak is a controlled off night rate, typically between 9 o'clock and 4 p.m. in the afternoon. So it can be variable. Shoulder is in between. So shoulder is sometimes between 9 p.m. and 9 a.m., something like that. And that's if you're on a tariff. If you're on a time of use tariff as well, time of use will charge during your peak hours, demand charge. So that is per kilowatts. Per kilowatt is your maximum use during your demand time window. Some people have solar credit as well down the bottom there. That's a feed in, which is an offset to your electricity. So that's some people want to know about that. That's also measured in kilowatt hours. Right. So on your bill, you'll see four items: electricity usage, dollars per kilowatt hour; demand, which is your dollars per kilowatt, and then a service charge, dollars per day. Your solar credit is also in kilowatt hours. So your demand charge is based on the highest kilowatt loads in a half-hour period for a whole month during the peak periods of any one day during that month. And as a result, you can have a very high demand charge just because you have simultaneous appliances being used for that half hour. So to avoid the demand charge, reduce simultaneous use of large power use appliances, or stagger the use, or use timers is the best way to overcome that. I won't be talking about that anymore, but that's just how to reduce the demand charge. Let's talk about now the main uses of electricity. So um, the Queensland government has done a lot of investigation into this, and so this is basically Queensland based, or southeast Queensland in some cases. 10 main uses of electricity in an average home. Now, what's an average home? Yes, go figure. Everybody's different. There are extra uses of electricity that aren't included on in those 10 main uses. We'll touch on them briefly. We won't be looking at gas use, but you can infer gas consumption from electricity consumption for the same or similar type of appliance. The purpose of an energy audit is to estimate the use of energy. How much energy is that device using? And then how can we minimize the use by developing good energy habits? For example, switching off when you're not using it. That's a very good habit to have. So what are the 10 main uses? I'll take a bit of time going through this slide here. So let me put on my annotation here. So can you see my lighter here? Okay. So we've
We
got hot water. So hot water on a typical house is about a quarter of the electricity. So hot water is quite a large energy use. And so using hot water is important to make sure that you use it when you need it, and avoid using it when you don't need it. But sometimes it seems to be out of your control. We'll talk a bit more about that. Office equipment, I would include mobile phones in that, computers, keyboards, screens, even your Wi-Fi would be included in that office equipment. The refrigerators, that's including freezers and any like a wine cooler, things like that. That would be included in refrigerators. Lighting is 6%. That's probably a little bit high, and most people would have less lighting, but that would possibly include external lighting, flood lighting, and things like that. Security lighting. Cooking at 9%. We'll talk about that as we go. There's different appliances involved in the kitchen, and they can all be counted as cooking if they're heating, but everything else that's not heating is counted as an appliance. So that's all lumped in the 8% down here. All sorts of things. Your vacuum cleaner and things like that. All sort of appliances are counted in that 8%. Entertainment would be your TV and your set-top box, your video player, all stereo, that sort of thing. Game Boys, PlayStations, that stuff. Um, the laundry is 9%. That's obviously washing and drying is pretty well, that's all the laundry does. You might be able to include, I think ironing is also lumped into that laundry. Cooling and heating, well, that's for heating a space, the air in the house, so heating and cooling the air. And dishwashers, not everybody has a dishwasher, so that's an average. People with a dishwasher may be higher than 5%, and obviously without a dishwasher, there's nothing there. There is a website down the bottom here, which is really handy to look at. And this goes into a lot more detail than I can present here on the presentation. So the Queensland Government Housing, Home Modifications, Energy Savings, Your Home is that website. And that has got a resource of valuable information on how to save energy on your electricity bill. So, and how to save money. So we're not talking about things that are missing. So we're not talking about pools. We're not talking about irrigation pumps. We're not talking about water treatment pumps. We're not talking about electric vehicles. Anything that high current, like a welder or machinery in the workshop. I'm not talking about solar panels or batteries. They all affect your consumption and generation. So when we're going through the audit, you will have to, if you have these extra pieces of equipment, you will need to consider what effect they have on the total energy consumption. So what affects your energy consumption? Let's have a look at these issues here. So number of people in the home. Obviously, more people using more equipment means more electricity. And then how much electrical equipment do you have? Some people have a lot of equipment, some people have very little. If you use electricity or you have electricity and gas, obviously gas is using energy, but I'm not counting gas in today. The weather conditions out in your area, so whether it's a hot climate or a cold climate, can affect how much heating and cooling you need. The size of your home is also part of the process. And a lot of people are looking at downsizing, and obviously that therefore allows them to have energy savings. If you have any power hungry appliances that I mentioned before, that affects your electricity consumption and the time you spend inside your home. If you're air conditioning, obviously, the longer you're inside air conditioning, the more energy you're using. So the usage pattern of your household appliance affect your energy consumption. And this is the challenge, is how do you know the variable energy consumption across the year? So here's an example for Brisbane. So looking at the number of people in a house, one, two, three, four, or more than five, the energy consumption varies between summer, autumn, winter, and spring. And really the essence of this table is to get you an idea. Each of these quarters is roughly 91 days. So let's say it's 100 days. So 1,000 kilowatt hours would be 10 kilowatt hours a day, that type of thing, just as a rough number. So what this tells us is in summer is the peak period of energy consumption across the average use in Brisbane. And that's because we have air conditioning largely. Autumn and winter are low, and then spring is the lowest of all the three. And that's because the weather is quite mild and quite pleasant, and we don't need air conditioning in those time periods. If you don't have air conditioning, of course, you won't be in this average. You'll have a different number, but this is just the average across all of Brisbane. So how do we do an energy audit now? Now, hopefully everybody's got a copy of that home energy audit worksheet that we sent out. I'll show you what that looks like shortly. So this is an easy way to keep track of everything and make sure you don't miss anything. The idea is that in your home energy audit worksheet, up the top, you've got how many people are in the house. That makes a difference. And then from your electricity bill, typically the retailers will tell you how many your kilowatt hours per day in the bill, somewhere on the bill. Typically it's on the front page of the bill, the kilowatt hours per day. Or if you don't have an electricity bill, or that's not easy to find, or let's use the benchmark as a start, and I'll show you that's the benchmark from the previous slide. I'll give you that information again shortly, so you can write that down. The purpose of the audit is to estimate your kilowatt hours use per day. I find that per day is the easiest way to measure it. And that means if you're using it only 2 days a week, it's only 2/7 of the average over the day for each day. So just remember that it's not the maximum uh, on any one day of the week, it's the average over the whole week. So different areas of use. The rule of thumb is more kilowatts for more hours equals more kilowatt hours. I think that's reasonable, simple mathematics. I hope I haven't gone too much for people. But so we need to keep track of the kilowatts and the hours. So on that home energy audit worksheet, this is what it looks like if you haven't got one. That's the worksheet that we got. So up the top here, you've got the number of persons, average kilowatt hours use per day. Well, I've given a split here. You might want to have a peak and an off-peak thing here because different appliances like hot water, for example, may be off-peak, and we can count that separately if you want to. Otherwise, we'll just lump it all together. But that's your total electricity use in consumption. And then if you have solar, that's an offset, and that estimating how much solar contribution is another webinar, so we won't talk about that. But we have here four columns, and we've identified a few items here in categories, but you can write down specifically what you have in your place, and then the power, which we'll talk about how to find out what the power is, and then how much average hours is used in a day. Multiply those two columns together, and you get the kilowatt hours. And then basically we add all that up and we get the total. But let's go a little bit slowly so that we all together on this journey. So in Southeast Queensland now, the average households in that benchmark curve, that blue graph I showed before, this is the average over the year. So obviously summer's a bit more than spring, about 10% more, but kilowatt hours per day on the benchmark for your household size is the number you can put in. If you don't have an electricity bill that gives you a number, that's the benchmark number that you can look at as a comparison. If you have your actual electricity bill, then obviously you do have a number that you can aim for to compare your estimated consumption with your actual consumption. So that's kilowatt hours per day. This is Southeast Queensland and Northern New South Wales. This is all, they've all been put together. Northeast New South Wales, sorry. So if you've written that number down on the worksheet, hopefully you've got that number. And let's go to how to find out power now. That's the next part of the presentation. So these benchmarks did not have a pool. They did not have electric vehicle, no gas, no underfloor heating, and no solar PV. So there are things that were left out of this benchmark average because not everybody has those 5 items. So how do we find the power use for an appliance? So most appliances have a rating on the back, some sort of nameplate or aluminium rating label. Sometimes it's just in the plastic molding, but the rating is how much power the device uses, the maximum rating, so that you don't overload your power supply by having too many things on at the same time. It'll have other information on it, which is not very helpful for this exercise, manufacturer, model number, serial number, but it will have something like watts or power, or sometimes kilowatts. Typically, they just have watts as the rating on the back of the appliance. These labels are on the side or on the back or underneath sometimes, and difficult to find in a lot of cases. So if you don't have access to the rating of the appliance, or you can't get to it, or it's fixed in the building, then maybe you have a manual. The manual, the owner's manual for the appliance will give you down the specifications near the back of the manual will tell you the power of the device. So that's the other way of finding the power use. particularly for things that are, say, above the ceiling, an air conditioner above the ceiling. Have to look for the manual to see what the power is. So let's go down that list of on the worksheet. I'm not going to go through all of them, but let's have a look at the first one, which is hot water. So on the hot water, we've got two items. We've got standing and use. So standing for a storage hot water system, it's too hot. It's hotter than outside, right? It's always losing heat from the tank to the air around it. And therefore, it's always uh, needing heat to reheat the tank. So a standing loss is something between 2 and 5 kilowatt hours a day. 2 kilowatt hours a day would be for a well-insulated tank that's inside a cupboard, that's inside a cupboard, that's inside a cupboard, locked away, and it never gets to see the outside air. 5 kilowatt hours a day would be for a tank that's out in the wind and blowing around in the breeze and in a cold part of the yard or beside the house. So in your case, pick which one works. Let's say it's 3 kilowatt hours a day for standing losses. And that's 24/7. That's every hour of the day. So 24 hours. Three kilowatt hours a day is the consumption over the day. So what is the use of hot water? A rule of thumb is 23 litres of hot water takes about 1.5 kilowatt hours to heat. So that's hot water at the temperature of the tank. Obviously, you're not using tank temperature during when you're having a shower. So let's say at 7.5 litres a minute, a shower typical, it could be between 6 and 9, but let's say 7.5. And let's say you're using half hot water, half cold water. Obviously, you use more hot water in winter, less hot water in summer. But again, this is an average over the year. Let's say it's 4 minutes long. So all of that would be a 1 kilowatt hour. So you can choose whether or not you have longer or shorter showers or more or less hot water. And that they give you a relative 1 kilowatt hour for those numbers there. So 1 kilowatt hour per person per day, obviously. So if you're having 3 showers a day, work that one out. It's That's how your hot water use in the shower. If you're having a bath, obviously that uses a lot more hot water. So that's also a number to put in there. And what else uses hot water? Washing dishes, washing clothes, washing cars. Sometimes people like using hot water for washing all sorts of things because it makes the job easier. So that's for a storage tank hot water system, and not everybody has that. If you only have an instantaneous hot water system, there's no standing losses. So that's something to take note of. But also, if you've got a hot water system that's using a heat pump by comparison, now a heat pump is much more efficient than an electric element. It's 3 times more efficient. It's what's called the coefficient of performance. That's what the heat pump machinery does. It takes heat from the air and puts it into the water. And as a result, you get 3 times more heating out of 1 kilowatt of electricity going in. So that's what the COP or coefficient of performance means. So your standing losses for a heat pump storage tank, typically they would be in a garage, but sometimes they're on the outside of the house. Well, let's say standing losses would be about 1 kilowatt hour a day. And then to heat the hot water, you're using a third, you're using 0.5 kilowatt hours for 23 litres of hot water. So your typical shower is about zero point 0.3 kilowatt hours per person per day. So per person shower per day. So that's a reason why people use hot heat pump hot water systems. They're much more efficient. Obviously, they cost more, but in operation, they are definitely much more energy efficient. So, and then, of course, your other hot water uses will have the same amount of litres, but less energy going into those litres because of the heat pump. So how to measure the use of electricity from most appliances? You can use this thing called a plug-in mains power meter. You might have seen these in the shops. If not, I'm telling you about them. You plug them into the mains and they cost between $15 and $30. I saw one the other day which was $20. So, that's typically what they look like. There's different brands are available. The idea is you use a short extension lead to the meter and you switch off your appliance, unplug it, and then plug it into the meter and then connect the meter back into the wall socket. The reason why I use an extension lead is so you can read it. Otherwise, the meter is down at the power socket, and it could be down quite difficult to get to. So use short extension lead to bring the meter out so you can read the display, and set the meter to read watts, and it can accumulate kilowatt hours for you. So for devices that are intermittent, for example, a refrigerator may be turning on and off regularly. It will read the kilowatt hours for a whole day and therefore give you the kilowatt hours per day straight off the display for you. So it makes it so much easier for intermittent equipment. It is really worthwhile buying these things because you can pretty well save the cost of the device just with one appliance, understanding how one appliance uses. So let's talk about appliances now. First one I'll talk about is a refrigerator. So this is a power rating label that I got off a refrigerator. This is a combination of refrigerator freezer. So we've got one rating label for the whole device. And we've got this thing here. So we've got rating current. That's the volt. That's the total rating. That's the voltage, and then rated current. But it's got no watts apart from down here where it's got 400 watts for defrost. Well, defrost doesn't happen that much, so pretty well that's not helpful. But it does give us here a rating current of 2 amps. See that? The amps is a measure of current, and we need to now convert that to watts. So here's a little bit of a complicated formula for us. So the rated current is 2 amps. The formula is amps times volts equals power. And let's just, for this situation, say that the 2 amps is times 240 volts is 480 watts. Exactly the voltage could vary, but let's go for maximum just to be conservative. In a refrigerator, it's intermittent operating, depends on how often you open the door, how often you put in warm things, all sorts of reasons why, and the insulation level on the device itself. But 20% operating is a good number to think about. So that refrigerator would be using something like 2.3 kilowatt hours a day. So as I said, it's an intermittent. I've guessed the 20%, maybe more, maybe less, obviously more in warmer weather, less in cooler weather, but it gives you an idea of how much energy use that refrigerator uses. A mains power meter will give you that number precisely. So that's refrigerators and freezers. If you have a fridge that's in the garage and you're not using it, turn it off when you're not using it. Unless it's a really bad design, it's not going to lose its gas while it's turned off. And then you can turn it back on when you need it. Running a fridge that's not highly used is very energy wasting. Let's look at lighting now. So most people have got LED lights now, the modern lights, but some houses still have the old style halogen lights. If you have a heater in the bathroom light as well, that counted as a heater. That goes into the either the heating part of the space heating, or it can go into appliances. I would probably put it in heating as a separate heating element, but they are very inefficient compared to air conditioners. Looking at lighting now, LED lights typically about 3 or 4 watts per light. And if you have 10, that's 40 watts, not very much at all. The old halogen lights at 35 watts each would be a lot higher. And if you're running for typically 5 hours a day and you're not putting all the lights on all at the time, so this is just an estimate here. You can put your own numbers in for how many lights you've got on most of the time, most of the night, sometimes lights during the day even. So 0.2 kilowatt hours for the LED lights and 1.75 for your halogen lights. So you can see the halogens are nearly 10 times the electricity consumption of the LEDs. So that's why we want to swap them out where we can, if possible. Next one is cooking. So this one's quite variable. Some people like to cook and they cook all the time and they cook for their friends and they cook for all sorts of events. So they're cooking a lot. An oven would use typically 2 to 5 kilowatts of power in the oven, and a cooktop uses between 1 and 3 kilowatts on the cooktop. Obviously, you've got multiple elements. You're not going to be at 3 kilowatts all the time, and different elements have different power, so it depends on which ones you use. An induction cooker will be very similar. It just means because the power is very similar to a normal electric oven or electric cooktop. An induction cooktop is more efficient because the energy is transferred to the food faster and more efficiently, and that's why they're preferred. They look very similar, but they are more efficient. They're about 20% more efficient than an electric element cooktop. Depends on how many hours you use your cooker and depends on the time heating or at temperature, and obviously simmering, or when your oven's got to temperature, it's not heating at all, it's just sitting there. So the efficient way of cooking is to use your oven as full as possible when you are cooking, so that the heating of the oven is used for multiple dishes. Let's give an example of a microwave oven now. So this is a nameplate from a microwave. We've got here, let me just clear this, excuse me. So we've got here two numbers. So we've got rated input 1200 watts, and then we've got this 700 watts underneath it. So that 700 watts is what you use for cooking your food. So where they say using a 700 watt or an 800 watt microwave, cook for 5 minutes and adjust your time according to the power of your appliance. So that's your cooking watts, your 700. The 1200 is the power going in. So that's the number we want to use. So electrical power input is 1200 watts or 1.2 kilowatts. If we're using it for 30 minutes a day at full power, that's 0.5 hours. Or if it's using longer at partial power, you work out what hours it is. So in this case, the energy is 0.6 kilowatt hours a day. So that's fairly high energy use, but if more efficient because it's using it for a shorter period of time. Let's have a look at a kettle. This one's a really straightforward one. So for a kettle, we've got down here, maximum power use is our variable range because we have a variable voltage. So let's go for the maximum 2200 watts or 2.2 kilowatts. So we can boil 1 cup of water in about a minute. Really depends on how cold it is when you're boiling it. That is, the whole kettle needs to heat up to that temperature. But typically, if you're running it many times during a day, then 12 cups of water will take 12 minutes or 0.2 hours, and therefore that'll be 0.4 kilowatt hours a day for a kettle. Some people more, some people less, but it's certainly something that we can take on board as an indication of power. The most complicated one I want to give you now, and this might lose a few people, but I'll try and go slowly, is an air conditioner. So here we have an air conditioner. We've got cooling up the top here, COP of 5.12, and then we got cooling kilowatts of 2.51. Now, none of them is electrical power. This cooling power, kilowatts, is cooling energy that is cooling the space. That is how effective taking heat out of the room the air conditioner is. So how did you calculate your energy consumption when it's running at full power? So the coefficient of performance is the ratio between energy in and energy out. So the coefficient of performance is 5.12. So the cooling electricity in is 2.51. This is the cooling out divided by 5.12, because we're using less electricity than the effective cooling that we're getting. We're getting 2.51 cooling, and we're getting a lot less electricity in to achieve that. So this is quite a high efficiency air conditioning unit. I think it's something like a 5-star unit, and it's when we bought it. And this gives us a number of zero point 0.5 kilowatts when it's running at full load. So next thing is, so that's good. We got the power, but how often does it run at full load? Well, it runs at full load for typically less than an hour each time it's turned on, depending on the temperature of the day. And I haven't done heating here, but you can see the heating numbers are slightly different. But for cooling is typically the main use of electricity for air conditioning. Full load for about an hour, and then after that it'll be variable. You have an inverter that varies the speed of the motor, and that changes the speed of the air conditioner, and as a result it uses lower power part load for most of the time once it's got down got to the set temperature. So I've estimated 4 hours a day. I just said, let's just say we're running it for some of the night, and as a result, it's 4 hours on average, typically, to come up with this 2 kilowatt hours a day average. So this is per air conditioner. So if you have multiple split air conditioners, then add them all up. There might be slightly different numbers for each one, but this is the kilowatt hours per day that you can kind of think of an air conditioner when it's running and doing its job, keeping you cool for most of the evening or during the daytime. If you're running it for longer periods of time, then obviously that 4 hours might be 6 or 8 hours, maybe even 12 hours if you're running it for the whole day. So that's because it's part load. It might be 0.5 kilowatts at full load, but in part load, it's only a fraction of that, maybe only 0.2 kilowatts when it's running at minimum load. So that's a bit of a thing to get a handle on. Let me just delete that. Let's go to standby power. So we're just going to skip over a few of these on the presentation. So on the standby power now, standby power, what is it? Everything that has a remote control uses electricity if it's switched on at the wall. So because the remote electronics is looking for the signal from the remote control, and so it's always on using electricity just for that few seconds when you actually are using the remote control. So things like a TV or a video, a set-top box, air conditioner, even ceiling fans, lights, ceiling lights, lots of things are run by remote controls nowadays. And it's unavoidable because you can't buy them without remotes nowadays. That's how they come. If it's not switched off at the wall, it is using standby power. So let's say a typical standby on, say, a TV is using 4 watts. It may be more, maybe less, but let's say it's always 4 watts. For 24 hours, that's 0.1 kilowatt hours a day just for the TV. And then you've got 3, 5, 6 other things that are using standby power. Every remote is using standby power, and it would be something like 0.1 kilowatt hours a day for each standby use. Sometimes it's a lot more than 4 watts. I'll give you an example of one that I had. A microwave was with a clock. It was an old-fashioned type of clock. So I thought it was quite inefficient, but when I turned the clock off, it was still using 60 watts of power. I used my power meter to read that, and I said, well, okay, how much is that costing me? At 34 cents a kilowatt hour, that was costing me $180 a year just to run the clock. And I said, I'm not going to do that. So I switched the microwave off unless I was going to be using it. So the rule of thumb at 34 cents a kilowatt hour is your standby watts times 3 is your dollars per year. So that's a real easy way of turning your watts into dollars. Standby powers run for 24/7, run all the time. So moving down the list here, excuse me, we've got garden and garage. So this is all sorts of gadgets and gizmos that are used occasionally, sometimes a lot, sometimes not very much. If they're not used more than if they're not used every week, then probably don't bother with them on the list. It's only for things that you use regularly seem to make a big difference. But list your kilowatts. If you have a pool, a pump motor will have a kilowatt on it. It'll be running for a certain amount of hours, and that can add up quite quickly because pumps do run intermittently to keep the filtration working. Um, if you have a charger, like electrical equipment, garden equipment that has a battery charger on it, just remember to count the charger. It does use power when it's charging. It's got a lot of energy in those batteries, but they don't like being left turned on. So when a battery is charged, switch off the battery charger. That's actually safe for the battery then. They are okay to leave on trickle charge for a while, but they will dry out and you wear your battery out faster if you leave it on a full charge. Electric vehicles, I'll just touch on that really briefly because some people are thinking about that. You need to know your kilowatt hours per 100 kilometres. It is advertised on the electric vehicle on a typical driving cycle. Again, until you've got more information, just use what's in the brochure as an estimate for electricity consumption for that. So we've nearly got to the end of that list. So let's have a look at what we're doing now on the energy audit worksheet. So you list all your appliances. I've skipped over a few of them here, but I think you'll get the idea. If you need to, watch the presentation again to get more details on how to do it for different appliances. Though you've got the name of the appliance, the watts, the hours per day, kilowatt hours per day, and then add it all, calculate that to the decimal place kilowatt hours is probably close enough. Add the total and then compare that with the first number that we put on the form, the kilowatt hours per day average or the benchmark. So using those power meters, if you need to for intermittent appliances, does take the guesswork out of the kilowatt hours. So this is the tail half of that form. The rest of it, and you can see the total down the bottom here. That's where you put your total number. I don't know whether the total kilowatts makes a difference unless you know those appliances are part of your demand period and you're using them simultaneously. Like, for example, your car, let's say you've got a battery charger, you've got an air conditioner, and you've got an oven, and that's 5 kilowatts of load. Well, that's your demand charge. But if you can change that, stagger the use of large appliances, then you can use less demand and therefore be charged less. So how do you reduce energy? This is what we're all here for. So cheapest power is the power you don't use. Simple. Don't use it if you don't need it. Sometimes you leave things on because you can't get to the power switch. So maybe the power switch is in the dust down below, crawling on the floor, not very easy to turn off and not very convenient. So you don't bother, just leave it on. Maybe what you can do is reposition and bring an extension lead out so that you can have a switch on a power board and turn it off away from the wall socket so that you can turn things off and have them on and off when you need them only. Combine appliances on one power board so that you can switch things off simultaneously. This works really good for entertainment equipment because once you're finished with it all, you're finished with it. You don't need anything turned on anymore. Just make sure you shut them down properly so that they don't go into brain damage mode when they're not being shut down properly. And then same with office equipment. They can all be switched off on one power board once they've been shut down. It does help to know the kilowatts of different appliances if you have measured it or you've got the rating from the manual. I've actually gone around the house and put labels on things just so to remind me that this uses 600 watts, this uses 1200 watts, just as a bit of a friendly reminder so that I know how much power is being used when I'm using different appliances. You don't have to do that, but I just found it was a fun thing to do. I think they've worn off now, those labels, but it was good to do for a period. Use higher power appliances occasionally and stagger their use to minimize demand. And then, is it worth switching things off? Yes.
Okay.
Simply put, save money by switching things off, save
Clyde,
time. Yeah,
can I just jump in with a quick question that we've got just in regards to the power boards that you were mentioning?
yeah,
The power boards with the off switches on them, the question is that as good as turning it off at the wall?
yes.
Yeah, okay,
So
cool.
they will have a little illuminating light on them which says the power is operating. But typically, that's only a watt or two, that little red or yellow light that's on the power board, if it has one. Yeah, if there's a switch on the power board, when you switch it off there, that appliance is no longer powered. And the only thing that is powered is the power board itself, and that uses very little power.
Of course. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, so here's an example of one of those things, a little power pack for a charging a phone, 10 watts charging because it's quite a high powered battery in these phones. You can't reach the switch, so you leave it on for most of the time. You only need it for 1.2 hours a week, or let's say 60 hours a year. So for 8,760 hours, most of that is not being used. So you've got 87 kilowatt hours of electricity being used by that plug pack at 40 cents a kilowatt hour is nearly $35 a year. So it's always worth switching things off when you're not using it. Um, so how do you reduce energy consumption? Use only what you need. It's nice to have things conveniently just there, but if you're not needing it, switch it off at the power point when they're not in use. Think about what you need energy for, and whether there's a more efficient way of doing it. For example, not being labor saving. Not being labor saving. It is a labor saving thing, but maybe exercise is good for us all. And then swapping appliances for more efficient ones is always a good thing. So how do we know which appliances are efficient when we go shopping? So there's these energy rating labels. Have you seen these? So you've got this energy rating label over here, 458 kilowatt hours per year. That tells you that estimated electricity consumption of that appliance over the whole year. And that can therefore, we can convert that to dollars. I'll show you that shortly. You can compare appliances when you're going shopping. Looking at the higher energy star ratings gives you a higher efficiency, and you can compare the running cost to the difference in the price of the appliance. Every appliance is labelled on that energyrating.gov.au website, and that's also another way. If you've lost the manual of an appliance, you can look it up on that website to see what the energy rating is, the energy efficiency of an appliance. So when you're buying a new appliance, which size is right? Do I want something big just because it looks fancy, or is a smaller size appropriate for the use of the space I've got available? How efficient is the appliance compared to other options? And cost-wise, annual cost kilowatt hours divided by 2.5 is your annual cost. So if it's 250 kilowatt hours, it'll cost you $100 a year to run. So smart appliances are much more energy efficient. They do cost more, but they do save their money over time. Use high energy star rated appliances. So these ones are better on the environment and they use electricity more efficiently. Sometimes there's a timer or a built-in energy saving capacity on some of these appliances. They can help reduce your energy consumption. Your higher energy use appliances, what I call the top appliances, use those for periods of low demand outside of that 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. peak. Use them off peak, outside that peak, or in shoulder periods will certainly reduce your peak demand tariff. And if you can conduct an energy audit to see where you're using your energy, which is what this presentation is all about, you'll understand where you've got more savings to be made. And there's also clean energy alternatives and shopping for electricity to get lower rates. A lot of people do that. And this is another presentation that we'll be talking about in a few months' time, I think it is. We're scheduled to do the energy tariffs presentation. So look out for that one and see if you can find out a better way to do things. And this last slide I've got here before we get into questions is why we're doing this. So this beach is a lovely beach, and it doesn't take much water sea level rise to lose it. And according to the science, that's the future, is that the sea levels will rise and these beaches are going to be disappeared. And that's very sad because we all enjoy a good, lovely, beautiful beach like that. So I think that's something which I would like to just remind us all that we can do our bit to reduce the electricity consumption in our own homes and our bit to reduce the emissions into the environment, which are getting too much for the planet to cope with. Anyway, a little bit of my politics here. Uh, I've got this post-engagement survey while we're doing the questionnaire, doing our questions. This is a survey that Kayleen mentioned that is after the presentation. This has got a few more questions on it, on what you have found, learned, or got insight as a result of the information session. And this QR code is particularly for this presentation. So if you can scan that, hopefully you can use your QR code on your phone, scan that, and we'll leave that on while we're answering questions.
Yeah, we with the post engagement survey, I'll send the links out as well if people can't do it on their phones now. I'll also send a link out to another survey that we're running. And if people, it's a follow-up survey. So there's a couple of questions that you answer now, and then in 4 weeks, we will contact you. And if you can answer some other questions as well, just to gauge how much of this information was something you were able to implement in your own homes or your offices. And if you're able to complete the follow-up, actually go in the draw to win a $400 gift card, which is drawn, I think it's in like 6 weeks now. So if you're able to complete that, then you get that. And I would say that you're in with a good shot. The promotion has only just started, so there's not very many entries as of yet. So if you can complete that, that would be wonderful. If anyone has any questions as they're going through the worksheets that Clyde's presented on, feel free to email me directly. Excuse my voice, everybody. Feel free to email me directly, and I will have Clyde's details as well. So if you've got any very specific questions for him, I can put you in contact with him, and he'll be more than happy to help you with that. Thank you so much, Clyde. We've learned so much. This is luckily for me not my first time I've heard you present on this, but every time I learn a lot more. So we're really grateful to have you in the program and to have you presenting for us today. If anybody does have any questions in addition to the one we just received earlier, please pop them in now. Otherwise, I will send you out a whole bunch of information, as I've said, at the end of this. Thank you all so much.
Okay, thank you.